Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Annette Schmidt. I'm the curator for the African department. Thank you. And I will talk about two cases from the African department when we were just Museum Volkenkunde. First of all will be the Tellem collection. And I must say that my predecessor, Roger Bedeau, was the one who handled this case. The Tellem collection was collected by Herman Haan in the 60s of the last century. He started the collection by, which was, could be found in an escarpment in the middle of Mali, in the West African country. And in this escarpment were caves, and these caves were used as necropoles and were full of buried persons with clothes on and their jewelry and other objects that were given to them. So Herman Haan was the first who initiated the research, but the research was continued by the former Institute of Bioanthropology that doesn't exist anymore. They did their research there in the 60s and in the 70s. And what I think is important is that in that period of time, Mali was already an independent country. And it is with this country that the researchers made clear division agreements with the Malian government that were respected. And so everything that went, almost everything that was found during these excavations went to the Netherlands, and after the Institute of Bioanthropology closed, the collection came to the Museum Volkenkunde. And this was quite an impressive collection. It is mainly an archaeological collection, and what it exists of is clothing, and what is so impressive about it is that it is the oldest sub-Sahara textile collection in the world. That makes it quite exceptional. But there were also grave goods and the people itself, of course. The problem is that the Tellem don't exist anymore. These people dissolved in other groups, so there's not a proper representative of them. So the National Museum in Mali is more or less the Cadossian, or what is the word again? Yeah, for these collections. But after the Institute of Bioanthropology closed, these collections came to the Museum Volkenkunde. So the Museum Volkenkunde already had a very long-standing cooperation with the National Museum in Bamako, because together we had large projects to safeguard Malian's cultural heritage. We had a big excavation that we did for 5 years. For 16 years we had a restoration project in which we restored monumental loam architecture. And it was during this cooperation that the director of the National Museum came with the request to return the Tellem collection to Mali. And what was so interesting is that he wanted the return of the archaeological collection, so Siraj, which is totally different from your experience. He was not interested in the human remains that still stay in our collection and are under research as we speak by a South African researcher. So because of this good relation and because he came with this request, we thought there were ethical and moral grounds to consider this, and we agreed to go not only consider this but also accept this. There were totally no legal grounds for the return of this collection because the division agreement was respected, but times had changed and our views had changed, and I think that was the main reason why we decided to return this collection. But before we return it, there was extensive research by one of the researchers of the Tropenmuseum. So all the collection was there was an inventory, there was a proper description, all the results were published. And what we did is that we returned the ownership of this collection to the National Museum. So it's not a change of custody, of custodian change, but we really changed the ownership. The ownership went back, because they were the owners in the first place, to Mali, and we asked the director of the museum in Mali to divide the collection in 2 equal parts. That's what he did, this is not what we did. And one of this collection went back to Mali, and the other one stayed in our museum as a long-term loan. And there was another thing, because there's a saying in Mali that is called cadeau empoisonné, that is a poisoned gift, when you give somebody but you know that they can't really accept it because they don't have the means to do it properly. So they say, well, it's nice that you give it back, but please help us to maintain it properly. So we found money in the Netherlands to build them an adequate storage room. So not only giving the collection back, but also giving them the opportunity to store it properly. And these storage rooms and the return were paid by the museum, but also by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So what was so wonderful is that this collection can now be seen in both our museums, in both our permanent exhibitions. But what is also powerful from this return of this collection is that our long-standing collaboration is still there and very strong, and that we are 2 equal respected partners, and that we share our knowledge and share our collections so that both countries and both museum publics can join and enjoy these collections. And one of the results was also this joint exhibition that was in Leiden and in Bamako, and was made up from collections in Leiden and Bamako. So this was an actual return of a collection. A second example that I would talk about is the Benin Dialogue. The Benin Dialogue started in 2000, well, it started long ago actually, when the minority of the collection, from the Benin collection, comes from a punitive expedition of the British in Benin in 1897. And by the means of middlemen in Hamburg, Umlauf, and in London, Webster, part of the collection had been sold to our museum. This can be regarded as one of our top collections, and the Benin collection played a very important role in the acceptance of African art in Europe, for example, well, the rest of the world actually. And this collection is also part of our permanent exhibition and can be enjoyed by a Dutch audience. But it was in 2007 that was a very famous Benin exhibition in Vienna, and on the initiative of the Welt Museum and the National Committee of Museums and Monuments in Nigeria, they took steps to open up a dialogue to open the accessibility of these treasures of the Benin Kingdom for the Nigerian public. Because due to the colonial wars in the 19th century, this collection had been scattered all over the world in private museums and in museums, and was almost inaccessible for an African audience. The Nigerian authorities and the Benin court put forward their wish to make these collections accessible to the peoples of origin and the Nigerian public. So in 2000, so after the initiation of this dialogue, there were 3 meetings. The first took place in 2010 in Vienna and was used to form a platform for future cultural cooperation between the Nigerian partners and the European museums. They invited legal experts from Nigeria and from Austria, and they debated on and discussed the respective standpoints on the Benin matter. In the second meeting in 2011 in Berlin, during that time several European museums had started programs in which was the aim to share collections and their knowledge and cooperate with people from the source countries of their collection as equal partners. All the participants thought and believed that difficult questions could only be addressed in a dialogue, and they envisioned their encounter as a collegial exchange of opinions and a joint effort to look for viable solutions. And the result was that we started to put on all our Benin collections online so that could be accessed from all over the world. The last meeting took place in 2013 in Benin City, and here you see the Oba of the Kingdom of Benin. The Kingdom of Benin still exists, and this is the current Oba. And he invited us to his palace to talk about these aspects with him directly. But we also talked with representatives of the Nigerian Ministry of Culture and representatives of the National Commission of Monuments and Museums. And this workshop resulted in the Benin Plan of Action, a joint proposal on the content of a memorial of understanding that the participating museums will consider as an official step in their cooperation. And in this plan of action, we had the digital and printing publication on the Benin collection of the participant parties, the accessibility of the collection to the staff of the collaborating institutions, the waiving of reproductive fees, the assistance with expertise, scholarship and support for curatorial education, and the support for the development of libraries and archives on these collections in Nigeria. All these aims was to create and enable an environment of exchange and joint exhibitions and loans in both directions, so that we both could bring all these collections together and they would be accessible for everybody. Unfortunately, this is the last step, and since 2013, there hasn't been taken much action, unfortunately. So these are two case studies from the African department, and maybe in the discussion we can talk a bit more on them. Okay, thank you for your attention.